Hello, I'm John Grom, and welcome to our 119th Right and Left Discussion Forum. We hold our televised discussions twice monthly to demonstrate the value of civil, productive, open-minded political dialogue. Today, our panel will discuss the conflict between the federal government and some states over immigration. The federal government is facing resistance from some states and cities over immigration laws. The Fed feels that it has the Constitution on its side, and state and local officials feel that they have compassion and justice on theirs. Our panel will try to sort this out. Today's panel, beginning on my left, is Jerry Ritzman, co-founder of Ritzman's Pharmacies. On his left is Patty Haskins, member of the Wadsworth City Council. On her left is Bryan Laubaugh, president of R&B Financial Services. And on his left is Dr. Ronald Chamberlin, retired senior research chemist.
Way to the left.
First question is for Jerry Ritzman. Jerry, I think it's pretty well established that many illegal immigrants in this country risk their lives to escape intolerable circumstances in their home countries. Some even have their lives threatened. But they're contributing members of our society. Other illegals engage in criminal activities, including rape and homicide. It appears to be politically impossible to treat these groups according to their behavior. What do you think?
Well, I'm going to start out with a little circumlocution about this topic, John, and say, you gave some differences in illegal, illegal, and so forth. And there's also a difference between immigrants versus refugees. And from my knowledge, that the refugees are coming here legally, and many of them have lived their whole life in refugee camps, many at least 10 years since they've made the application to come to the United States. And then they face very daunting obstacles in becoming a part of the American society. Now, immigrants and refugees are probably coming here because of economic conditions, because of persecution, because of even being imprisoned and tortured. And so that's why they're here. And it seems that a lot of the economic distress in some of the countries that they're coming from are due to the lack of the rule of law. If you talk to people who are natives of Haiti, Central America, and other countries, the economic conditions are in shambles because there is no rule of law, and nobody can really depend upon their being able to do business and not have it confiscated from them in one way or another. Mm-hmm. You look at Haiti, you look at Central America, and you talk to people from there, and they say that the government is totally corrupt, and that's why the economy's in the tank and they can't do anything. But anyway, that's the difference in my mind between immigrants and refugees, but they end up pretty much in the same, they're here for the same reasons: economic, war, persecution, whether it be religious or ethnic persecution and so forth, so they are here. I feel that in this situation that we're facing with states and cities opposing the federal law, that at least at the federal level, we need to have our U.S. policies coordinated. Our foreign policy, our economic trade policies, our military policies have to have some common philosophy about how we're going to treat and try to influence immigration or to stop immigration. And if we can somehow, through our foreign policy, move some countries to have more rule of law, to more responsible governments that are not confiscating the wealth of the country to the few of the elites. But now we get to the point of no single one of those is going to do it. Trade policy isn't going to do it, military policy isn't do it, foreign policy is not going to do that. But if we get to the point where we're defying the laws, whether the state or the city, to me it still comes down to the Congress is not meeting up to its responsibilities to make the laws that are workable for the U.S. and for the immigrants and for the refugees. They're not standing up and doing what they need to do. So before we can get a political solution, I believe, and I'm no political scientist or anything like that, but I believe that a widely accepted moral or ethical case needs to be built from the ground up. A case or a stance must first be developed in the general populace that then influences the political. We can't have the political dictating what our moral or ethical stance should be.
Should be the other way around.
It should be the other way around, because look at the examples. We look at civil rights. The laws were on the side, but there was a consensus, a widely accepted stance developed in the population over a number of years that eventually influenced the political outcome of that. Look at slavery in the early to mid 1800s. It was legal. The Constitution was on slavery's side, but a widely accepted moral and ethical stance was developed throughout the country to force that change. Look at women's suffrage. The Constitution was on the side of women not voting, but there was a widely accepted ethical or moral stance developed in the population that eventually had an effect on the political outcome. It can't be the other way around. But until we do that, before we start some peaceful civil disobedience, we need to make sure that our stance or our actions are based on a sound, well thought out ethical or moral basis. We cannot have these policies or our actions, whether it be like, and I'm not saying it is, let's say in Oakland, where the mayor is resisting or kind of obstructing some of the enforcement of the federal laws. I'm not commenting on whether her stance is political or whether it's ethical and moral, but it needs to start there. And then if there are ethical and moral situations where the laws are opposed to that, I think we as individuals have to stand for that change in whatever way we might do that, in some civil disobedience or accepted way.
Patty, where are you coming from?
Okay, first, before we begin, I want to say congratulations to our high school wrestling team and John Gramuglia's team for finishing third in the state, having a state champion. I want to say congratulations to the Wadsworth bowling team who came in fourth under the direction of George Steele. And I want to say good luck to the girls basketball team that is playing in the semifinals tomorrow night. Now, where do I stand? Where do I stand on this issue? I really have very mixed feelings. If you look at the beginnings of sanctuary cities, they actually started years and years, centuries ago, as a form of a religious sanctuary, and to help refugees that, as you mentioned, coming from bad conditions. The big push for sanctuary cities in the United States actually came with the influx of refugees from El Salvador and Guatemala and various areas, and also supported by religious groups offering sanctuary status to these immigrants who were not legal, but they wanted to give sanctuary to them because of the conditions in their country. We fast forward to today with we now consider being an illegal alien a felony, which before was not, coming into the country illegally was not considered a felony. It is now a felony. And we're looking at
for the first occurrence?
Yeah.
Okay.
And how do we treat these immigrants? And with the increase in deportation, we have seen this raft of sanctuary cities develop. The thing that's interesting about it is they're all different in how they offer that sanctuary status. They claim that they need to have this for the good of the community, so that illegal aliens will report crime, so that they will go to the doctor and get health services without fear of being sent back to their native country. And in many cases, they found that crime has either stayed the same or gone down since they've become a sanctuary city. I recently saw the Attorney General of California, I believe his last name is Becerra, and he states that, we're not trying to violate the federal laws. What we are doing is saying we're not going to do the U.S. government's job for them. So if they want to detain, if they want to come in and arrest illegal aliens, then they need to come and do it and not expect the local forces to do that. They've also invoked, of course, in the state a couple of other laws which are interesting as far as, public employees cannot assist the federal government. They've also put that onus on to private businesses as well, which is going to be questionable as to whether that can hold up constitutional standards.
Yeah, because it puts the employer in a position of having to break a law one way or another.
One way or another, which no matter how they answer the question, they're either breaking a federal law or a state law. So, that's going to go through the courts. Those, the thing is, though, do I think that should there be sanctuary from all crimes? No, obviously not. If someone commits murder, if they're convicted of robbery or whatever, they should be punished. And if that includes deportation, then yes, it should be. But perhaps, and that's why I fluctuate, because I can see the advantages. I don't think any sanctuary city is saying we're not going to prosecute murderers. If they have a murderer, they are going to prosecute that person. They're not saying, oh, they're an illegal alien, so we're going to give them sanctuary. I think they're looking at those that have not committed other felonies, and I say other due to the fact that the first time in the country is considered a felony, and how they can offer them safe harbor from where they came from. So mixed feelings on all of this.
Bryan, are your feelings mixed?
I think everything that Jerry said, I agree with. Patty made some very good points. I think the system is sort of run amok. We have situations where people that are on the street shouldn't be on the street. We have people that are here illegally. And I think the distinction that I make between an immigrant and a refugee, I don't put them in the same category as somebody that's here illegally. We have not large, but a fairly decent refugee population in Akron. We have people from Nepal, and through the International Institute, our church has done some things through them. We have people that are here, and they've come here the right way. My issue is when someone comes and they've lived here for many years, and there is a pathway for them to gain citizenship that they don't, for whatever reason. And we have these cities, there's outreach, we try to get these people legal, but for some reason they don't. There needs to be something that says, let's do what we can. Nobody wants to separate families. You've got the father that's been here for 25 years, he has 3 kids, he's been a productive member of our society, he might have served in the military. There should be a pathway for him instead of putting him on a plane and sending him back to El Salvador or wherever, okay? I get that. Okay. But there are other situations where the states need to realize that, it is the federal government's responsibility for immigration. And we just can't have every border state or every state deciding what their laws are going to be and how they're going to treat this. I mean, that's not their responsibility. And I know that there are some issues around that the states have struggled with, but I like to point out that over the last 8 years, the past administration deported more people than any other administration did, but the white hot lights of the media weren't focused on them. And they collected people, they rounded up people, they sent them home, and there wasn't nary a peep. And now, because there's a different administration and they're doing sort of the same things, we have situations where it is a terrible situation. But when you start looking at the whole reason why that person is in that particular predicament, you begin to realize and say, oh, well, probably it's long overdue. You know, they should have been legal, but they're not. So I'm all about compassion. Nobody wants to separate families, but we have to follow the law. And cities can't just decide, well, we're going to do this, but we're not going to do that. And we're going to do this, we're not going to do that because of the current political winds.
Bottom line, we need immigration reform.
We need
Exactly right.
We need immigration reform. We've needed it for the last 10, 15 years. Nobody's wanted. It's been a political football.
Longer than that.
You know, a long time. You know, and I agree. You know, there needs to be sort of a groundswell of people that say, wait a second here. Let's do this compassionately. Let's do it right. I'm all for it. You know, if you have someone that's been here and they've served in the military for 6 or 8 or 10 years, they go to the head of the line. But there's got to be a line.
And there's no line right now.
There is no line. And so what happens is they take these fringe situations and they blow them out of proportion, and it's like we're the worst guys on the global block. And I will add this, and I've said this before: there is no other country that has as porous of borders as we do, and large populations. In Germany, they have large populations of refugees and immigrants. They don't. They have second-class citizenship in that country. They're not citizens. They don't vote. They pay taxes. They pay everything. But you know, they're constantly monitored. They have to make sure they have the right papers in place. I don't know of anybody that recently has been asked for their identification papers.
Is that the same in England and France?
Yeah.
Is it?
Oh, I don't know if you've been following this, but England has just denied an individual entrance into their country because of her political views. And they've stopped her at the border. Yeah. So this notion that somehow we're terrible, we're not letting these people come in, I think some of these other countries, if you look at what they do and how they administer their laws, they'll put you on a plane in a heartbeat and send you out of the country.
Yeah. Ron, where are you coming from?
Jerry, thank you for your really impassioned thoughts here, and for all of you, really. It's not logically sound to reason from individual cases, I don't think, but I do know a couple where and the compassion thing seems to have failing. I have a friend who's a member of a large church in downtown Detroit, and he's the chairman of their Peace and Justice Committee, and they're harboring a person now, a family now. This gentleman had a stay of deportation because his wife has a severe form of multiple sclerosis, and they have small children. She can't take care of them herself. His stay of deportation was legally rescinded. And he's not a lawbreaker. He has this compassionate need to stay here, so he is a sanctuary in their church. I recently responded to my friend's request. I sent a letter to the field director of ICE in Detroit and requesting the situation as I understand it. And as my friend says, the immigration system is broken. And this is a case where it is. There's another case where the Columbus Mennonite Church is harboring a woman who is to be sent back and removed from her family. Again, not a lawbreaker. So the question of ICE going in and just rounding up a group of immigrants is it's a little bit counter to our legal philosophy. We have a presumption of innocence. So, let's just shoot them all and let God sort them out, as somebody said during Vietnam. I think we have to trust the legal system, the jurisprudence system in this country to find the bad guys and to treat the bad guys and leave the good guys alone.
Mm-hmm. I think in the final analysis it all boils down to politics, and that we have a terrible case of misunderstanding in this country about the details of immigration, mainly because the public is getting bad information from the media and from politicians. There are, I thought of about 7 different definitions of immigrants. But the word gets tossed around, and immigration gets tossed around depending on whose ox you'd like to gore. If one politician is talking about having a secure border and keeping illegals out, somebody else will say, this is a nation of immigrants. My grandparents came here from such and such, and not drawing a distinction between a legal immigrant and an illegal immigrant, and intentionally confusing the public. And I think that the public has all kinds of misunderstandings about what we're talking about. For instance, the DACA. First of all, they're not all children. Most of them are fully grown adults.
No, yes.
And that most of them are, to my understanding, contributing, productive members of society. And that just because someone wants to screen them carefully and find out who the criminals are, and if somebody has a DACA deferral because they're a DACA person or a dreamer, that you're trying to find out who the criminals are, that does not make you anti-immigrant. But that's what the people get confused about. That I think that we really need to demand that our media do what they're supposed to do, and that's keep us properly informed.
They don't obtain DACA status unless they've gone through that background check, very serious. And if they do commit a crime, they lose the DACA status.
Mm-hmm.
So,
you see, now how many people would understand that? Does that get explained very often?
and, you know,
I'm going to jump in here and maybe change directions a little, but just to go back, why are these folks coming to the U.S.? There are multiple answers.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And that's why our foreign and our military and our diplomatic policy have to get aligned up to try and fix those things that are pushing the folks here. Mm-hmm. If those were fixed, and I'm not saying that's an overnight thing, but we've got to move in that direction. And then Bryan, you mentioned also that there are pathways for people who are here. Some of the forms and some of the things that those individuals have to go through are confusing to relatively intelligent U.S. citizens who have been there their whole life. Mm-hmm. So I can see why if they get approached or if they get hit with this is what I need to do to become a U.S. citizen or to get some legal status here, it's overwhelming. Because it would be tough for me or you to figure this out.
One of the things that could be part of the solution is you create a pathway with the necessary documentation that's easy to read. This is sort of like when you do your taxes. Mm-hmm. Most people, if their tax situation is a little more complex, they go to somebody that helps them. Right. We need to make it so that an individual with a little help from a local agency, maybe it's not a government agency, maybe it's something like the International Institute in Akron, sits down with them and says, okay, here's how we get this started, and they start going through the process, and if it costs them $500 and they have 10 years to pay it or something like that, there's got to be a solution here. Mm-hmm. Instead of just saying, there's not, so we're sending you home.
Yeah.
Well,
that
it's
works,
also
actually.
the length
That
of
works.
time. The length of time that it takes to legally come into the country and the ability, we have as a government have said we're going to take fewer.
It's pretty expensive too, isn't it?
It's very expensive. Can be 10 years. So unless you have one of the loopholes, like I was just reading about the Einstein visa, that type of situation.
None of my
It's very
relatives
difficult.
ever qualified for the Einstein loophole when they immigrated here from Europe. So I want you to know that I have no conflicts there. So.
Well, what you say, Bryan, that works. And I have an example of that. I lived in the city of Danbury, Connecticut for a number of years. And that city is multi-ethnic. During the Vietnam era, they were flooded with refugees from Laos and Vietnam. And there was an organization formed through the auspices of the Ministerial Association that is dedicated to helping those folks find a place, and is very, very successful.
Yeah.
They're well integrated into the society, and are productive members for the most part. Danbury has no higher crime rate than many cities
Right.
that's on the side.
Well, you can look at Akron. Akron has a pretty decent Nepalese community at North Hill
I was gonna
area.
say, that's the one in the north.
And they work through the International Institute. They have to find a job within 90 days. They hit those marks. I mean, they're very industrious. They're very compassionate. They're hardworking people. They're the type of people that you hate to say you want those type of people here.
So
they're not
is-
criminals.
So is there a necessity, though, for the sanctuary city amidst all of this?
Well, the sanctuary city is just refusing to cooperate with ICE, and that it's difficult. I mean, the reason given often is that it's darned expensive for them to be retaining people until ICE gets around to processing
Exactly.
them.
And there's no offer of payment from the federal government.
Yeah.
And, the federal government says, well, we're not, they're saying you need to give us a detainer warrant. They're not issuing those warrants even, so.
Yeah, I mean, the Fed, if I were in the city, I'd say, Feds, this is your ball game. You play it.
Well, that's what the
We're not
Attorney
going to
General
obstruct you.
of California
You go
has
ahead
been
and do it.
saying.
Jerry, let me ask you this from a personal point of view. I know you spent quite a bit of time in Haiti working with ministries to help support poor people. You made a comment one time that the work ethic is not very strong in Haiti, and that it's difficult to get the natives to cooperate and provide labor on projects. Did I hear that right?
I think that they've been conditioned to that since probably the 50s when we came in with aid.
My question then is, how do you feel about importing people who do not have much of a work ethic?
When they get here, they seem to have a lot of work ethic. John.
Do they really?
If you look at them
Ah.
in South Florida, there's a big Haitian population, and those people work hard.
Great. Glad to hear that.
There's just nothing there to work on in Haiti.
Right, very, very poor.
Well, if we can get all the pundits and politicians to be very honest about things and quit trying to distort facts, maybe we'll get politically aligned behind something. But, we only got 12 seconds left, but we had a situation in Wadsworth on the west side. A young man was a foster child, didn't have citizenship, was deported as a teenager, sent back to South America and was murdered.
Right, I know that young man.
Yeah.
Knew that young man. Yes.
Well, thank you very much, folks. It was another good program. See you in 2 weeks.